Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Matt.
We'll start in about 3 minutes just to give folks a chance to log on. Good evening, everybody who's joining us. We're gonna start in about a minute. I just wanted to make sure folks had a chance to log on. Sorry, I muted myself. Why don't we get started, Haley? If you can just let folks know the preliminaries and how to let them know they're present for purposes of our taking attendance, that'd be great.
Sure. So for roll call, just please mute yourself when you're not speaking. And just note that this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on YouTube. And consortium members, please type your name into the chat for roll call for attendance purposes. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Haley. I'm Matt Den. I'm the co-chair of the consortium. Senator Lockman, who is the other co-chair and usually runs our meetings, is not with us tonight. She, as many of you know, has a newborn at home, and I had a chance to catch up with her very quickly this morning, and she asked me to let everyone know that everybody's doing great, and she and a number of you have sent well wishes to her, and she appreciates that very much. But everyone's doing real well. For our business tonight, we have, I'm not sure if we have a quorum yet, so I think we'll skip up to the updates, and then when we're sure we have a quorum, we can circle back and approve the minutes. So if we can skip up to the budget update slide. And before I forget, we have I wanted to welcome a new member who is with us tonight, and I think that she's here. Jennifer Tompkins, who is the new president of the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, is a member of our consortium who's attending our first meeting, and I think I saw her signed in. Are you here? And if so, welcome.
Yes, I am, and thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, and I'm happy to welcome you to your first meeting with some good news from our budget update slide. Members who were with the consortium a year ago probably remember that around this time last year, there was basically $0 committed to the consortium's goals, and we were having to work very hard with the Joint Finance Committee during the last month or so of session to have funds that were dedicated to some of the recommendations that we had made. Eventually, $10 million were included in the budget that was passed last June 30th. So in the fall of this year, late in the year, the consortium approached the Office of Management and Budget and asked that the governor include $12.8 million in the proposed budget for the next fiscal year for Reading Consortium recommendations. And when his budget came out, proposed budget came out in January, we were very pleased to see that he had recommended $12.8 million, exactly what the consortium had asked for. About 80% of that was included in his proposed operating budget, and about 20% of it was proposed as one-time funds. Senator Lockman had given some thought to trying to have that remaining 20% put into operating funds, or to ask the Joint Finance Committee to put the remaining 20% into operating funds for the next year's budget. She decided not to do that for a couple of reasons, one of which was she got an indication from the governor's office that it intended to put that remaining 20% into operating funds for the budget that he proposed for the following fiscal year. And that really had been our concern anyway, that there be some predictability to the money over a multi-year period, so that the providers who were going to be, who we were hoping would be proposing to do this work, would be able to do that with some confidence that the funds would be ongoing. And the other thing that caused her to have some confidence to leave things as they were is that we saw the first RFP being put together for the programs that are going to be funded by this budget, and that's the RFP for the wraparound services and wellness centers for schools with large percentages of low-income students. And that RFP assumes that the funds are going to be continuing over a 3-year period. So, with those two things in mind, she was confident leaving the funding the way that it was proposed, which again is a sea change from last year. So there will be $12.8 million in the budget that is passed by the General Assembly in June, dedicated to programs that were recommended by the Reading Consortium. The RFP for the wraparound services and wellness centers, which makes up over half of that money, is already out. The Department of Education already issued it. It's available for schools to submit proposals. There are 13 schools throughout the state that meet the eligibility requirements, which are based upon grade levels that are included in the school, and the percentage of children at the school who are classified as low income by the Department of Education. So for those 13 eligible schools, 3 schools will be awarded grants of up to $2.4 million a year for a 3-year period. And there's also an additional $800,000 available to schools in one-time funds who need to make some sort of physical alterations to their schools in order to qualify for the grants. So for example, if there's a school that wants to apply for one of these grants that doesn't currently have a wellness center and needs to make some alterations to its school in order to put one together, those funds are available to make them eligible. So great news. Basically, we're going to have 3 schools that are going to have after school, summer, and other wraparound services and wellness center programs that are funded at a level that the state has never really funded before. And it's a great opportunity for us to see how a really robust and comprehensive program can benefit these kids. Haley, did you want to jump in and talk about the inclusion of the staffing funds in the epilogue language?
I can also, I know Kelly and Shelley Rouser are also on the meeting. They might be able to give a little bit more insight, but Tizzy just let us know at the last planning meeting last Friday that funding for Reading was moved into epilogue, which just how I understand it essentially makes it just a bit more easy and transparent to get the funds from DOE to University of Delaware and then to Delaware State University. So it just clears up a lot of things on the back end and some red tape that the university typically goes through, and it helps us do our work better. If Kelly or Shelley wanted to add anything, please feel free.
You've got it, Haley.
No, I think you nailed it.
Thanks.
Well, like I said, this is all just very positive, and it's going to be great to see these things playing out. You will see in the RFP that already came out for the wraparound services, and in the one that will be coming out for pre-K services, you will also see some improvements, we think, that are just based on our first year of experience with the programs that were funded for the current fiscal year. And I think that a number of people who are on the consortium and who are in this meeting were very helpful in looking at how did it play out in the first year. You know, what would we like to see different as these programs go forward? And so I think there are some real substantial improvements based on learning on both fronts. I think we have a quorum now, so let's just jump back. And I think everyone got the April meeting minutes. And if I can hear either a motion to approve the April meeting minutes.
Hi, Matt. It's Tika. So moved.
Is there any discussion or requests to change the April meeting minutes? All those in favor of approve? Haley, I forgot. How do we, for meeting minutes, how do we do the votes? Is it just by voice vote?
Yeah, it's by voice vote. And if Kelly's okay, or I can read the attendance.
Haley, did you get a second to my motion?
I'll
I
second.
don't think so.
Aaron will second.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Aaron.
Perfect. Okay, so now we're good to go.
Okay. I didn't hear any requests to change anything, so why don't we get a vote on approving the minutes? And I'm sorry,
Okay.
we're doing this.
Would you like me to read
It's just a
roll
voice vote.
call?
It's just a
Well,
voice vote, all
Yeah,
in favor.
if we have a quorum, then all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any
Are there
abstentions?
any opposition?
The minutes are approved. I think I saw Secretary Holodick join us. And the next item that we had on the agenda, if it worked for him, was an update from him and from the Department of Education.
Thank you, Matt, and good to see you, and it's good to see everyone. So joining me tonight is our new Deputy Secretary of Education, Cora Scott, and also Jim Simmons is joining. I've been given a list of questions. I don't know, Haley, if those questions are in the slide presentation. There you go. So I'll just sort of go question by question, but I also see that we have a number of Reading members, such as superintendents and school leaders, educators who are with us that may want to provide some, additional information and or context beyond what, I could provide along with Cora and Jim. So feel free, after each question, I'll share some thoughts, in regard to what the department has done and is doing to support students and families through the pandemic, and now into the endemic and beyond. So the first question is, what supports and resources are needed to counter system-wide fatigue and shortages? I think the sort of key term here is system-wide. So yeah, I think when we first think of fatigue, we immediately go to the classroom, where I would suggest or argue it's probably where the greatest amount of fatigue is amongst our educators, paraprofessionals included, with teachers. But make no mistake, the whole system is fatigued, from superintendents to school board members, to all other administrators and beyond, in our schools. I think and custodians, bus drivers, and others. So to address fatigue, I think we as a system have to look at all of these different employee groups and really be thoughtful about listening and responding to the feedback they're giving us. So, things such as employee shortages, I mean, that arguably right now is our greatest challenge, is in people and staffing, everything from, attracting and retaining quality substitutes. I think that's, that and our inability in many schools and districts to have consistency in substitutes actually leads to some of that fatigue, if not a lot of it, because it ends up on the shoulders of educators in the buildings, covering classrooms, or in some cases pulling classrooms together. And, again, I recognize that varies from district to district and school to school, but at the end of the day, that's been a real challenge. So as you all know, many months ago, the governor, through executive order, made some changes this year to help with this, which included allowing retirees to return sooner, allowing them to earn more before it affected their pensions. So that was helpful. Through coordination with institutes of higher ed, some of which are on in today's meeting, we've worked with them to connect ed prep students with schools so they can get more experience and earn money while helping our schools fill those substitute needs. That's I think been really helpful. Of course, we can't educate kids if we can't get them there. So the districts and charters and the department have, worked hard collectively through the Joint Finance Committee to get additional funding, over 11 million in funding, to increase bus driver pay. We think that will help this fatigued system moving forward, which is really important. And then the final two pieces I would mention, I do think opportunity funding, which is so important to the Reading Commission and really comes out of the Reading Commission. While, it might not be as obvious in terms of how it impacts the system and the fatigue system, those resources that those additional funds and resources, I should say, really add value to the system and impact kids I think that's really important to note. And then finally, I would suggest that the Public Education Compensation Committee under Senate Bill 100, that requires us to review educator comp, the structure and our ability to compete regionally. I think that also long-term can be really helpful. So, the department, of course, has over the 4 months that I've been here has just been really directly involved in working with the General Assembly around all of these issues, but as if not more important, working directly with districts. And that partnership in Delaware has allowed for us to, I think, respond to the fatigue that's in the system right now. And it's not just in Delaware. There are plenty of articles that show this is a national challenge. And I think in Delaware, because of our size and those relationships, we're able to get some things done faster, which is positively impacting the system. Of course, the final point I would make is in 2 weeks, fatigue will be helped by the summer starting, which I think some people, if not almost everybody in the system, just needs a little bit of a break. So I'll stop there and offer Cora, Jim, or anyone else want to add anything to that first question. By all means, feel free.
The only thing I'll add, Dr. Holdick, is when we talk about the shortages, just knowing that working with the IHEs, again, you've mentioned some of them on the calls, on what we can do different to attract people into the profession, which will help with some of those shortages. Being innovative in how we use staff will help with the fatigue as well. So I think you touched on most of it though. So
I'll maybe add just one point, and it may not have quick immediate impact, but the kind of ties into what Jim was just saying about partnerships with IHEs and the year-long residency grants that were provided. I think that has an opportunity to maybe entice more pre-service candidates to enter the field. And then with that program, there's coaching and support provided once they do get employed. And so that can certainly help also with retention once they're in the field.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Cora. Anyone else? Okay, move to question 2, describing what quote unquote after COVID looks like for the department regarding students that are below, on, and above grade level. So I think for students that are below grade level, and we're likely to have, an increased number of those students. Again, this is not unique to Delaware. I think nationally we're going to see that many students who otherwise would have been on or above grade level might not be. And so I'll really focus on them. I would expect that on or above grade level, things will look similar to what we've done in the past, which is through differentiated instruction within our classes rather, through unique initiatives within schools and districts, unique programming. We will meet the needs of those students who are on grade level and above, and continue to push them. So, and as an example, in Sussex County, you have a county-wide program for students who are in the accelerated, I'll call it program that go once a week to Del Tech, where in both math and language arts they are pushed. Those kind of efforts will continue, and maybe based on what we've learned through COVID, perhaps differentiated instruction just becomes that much more robust, and we're willing to take more risks with those students For the students that are below grade level, what I think will be this, increased population of students, it's going to be ever so important that, whatever we've called it in the past in districts, whether it be problem solving team or an RTI team, there are various acronyms, it's all sort of under multi-tiered systems of support. We're going to have mechanisms for taking data that isn't super reliable right now, student achievement data, but other data points that are more reliable, tied to social emotional. So things like attendance data, school climate data, then this academic piece, and look at individual students and really try as a team, the key being team, looking at the whole child, make decisions on how we can best support those individual students. And how do we utilize our resources most, effectively? At the department, that kind of support looks like us through our website. We have classroom ready plans that can be utilized by schools and districts. We have a tier 1 instruction planning guide that a lot of our schools and districts use, Math Learning Center, PD opportunities. And then on a final point, I would note that every district and charter in the state developed ESSER plans. They're available on the department. They're required to be posted on the department's website. They are, and that's all based on local need. Districts did the best job they could in terms of capturing community voice and feedback within those plans. But what might work in a small southern district like Delmar might look a whole lot different than it does in the most northern district, being Brandywine, right? Those plans are going to vary a bit, as they should, because one thing we know is localized planning with support from the department is what typically works, best. So I would mention those things. There are others. I think I want to mention, I would hope that as we come out of this pandemic, that what we've learned through remote and hybrid teaching and learning, those lessons learned allow for us to think differently about how we meet students and where we meet students. There are a couple of really innovative and thoughtful superintendents in this meeting, and I know based on conversations I've had with them individually and in large and small groups, they are thinking about all of those kind of things moving forward and what that looks like for learning for our students, and how do you demonstrate skill development and acquisition of skills and knowledge to show students are learning beyond the four walls of a classroom. And I think a lot of people expect schools and districts to be doing that right now. I don't, only because it wasn't more than 100 days ago where we had schools pivoting to hybrid teaching and learning or full remote because of COVID. So I just think it's really, really hard for districts and schools to do that kind of innovative thinking while their school communities are still in this survival mode. And I appreciate and respect that. And I do see the department being a facilitator and supporter of that kind of innovation. I'll stop there. Again, Cora, Jim, anything that you two or anyone else wants to add, maybe a local example of anything that I just mentioned.
Thanks, Secretary Holiday. I know Haley put this in the chat, but if there are any consortium members who have questions for any of our guests from DOE, this would be an opportune time to ask.
I have a question. Dr. Holodick, just one thing I think would be helpful is, sometimes in education, we throw around jargon and then, we sort of don't really give a lot of context around it. But, we have talked about accelerated learning versus remediation, but it's not as simple as that. Like accelerated learning, what exactly is that going to look like in Delaware when the standards and the milestones that students need to achieve aren't changing, but yet we need to accelerate learning? So, I mean, it sounds like a really, impactful statement or, term, but what exactly does that mean? And is the department going to be able to provide us just a little bit more guidance on what exactly the expectation is?
Yeah, great question, Margie. And again, any of my colleagues feel free. You may or may not get a consistent answer on this. I think accelerated learn. I've heard from, if you talk to 10 educators about accelerated learning, you're likely to get, at least 5, if not more, different sort of explanations. I've always been taught and believed that accelerated learning is taking standards and thinking about ways in which you can help prepare all students, but in particular, those students who don't have the same kind of access to opportunities others might have to accelerate their learning before I'll call it unit or lesson begins. So, maybe a fine example would be, if you're going to be learning about the geography of the West in an upcoming unit, and you have students in your class who have traveled out West and seen the Grand Canyon and other geographical landmarks, et cetera, and others who haven't left the state of Delaware, you might be inclined to provide those students who haven't had access to accelerated learning opportunities that include readings and videos and conversations that put them in a much different place, better place, I would argue, to actually learn that information and the concepts that'll be taught when you get there. It's an accelerated learning is really hard because, of course, it takes a great deal of pre-planning. So in the middle of or during a pandemic, it's, to your point, Margie, I think it's an easy educational buzz term to throw around. Easy to do that, much harder to actually deliver upon it. And I'll turn to any of my educational colleagues to provide their thoughts on this. Could look different at the secondary level compared to the elementary level as well, of course.
I mean, I'll just add, I think, Dr. Holodick, you kind of explained it the way I would probably explain it as well. I would just add to what you shared before about the data piece, because I do think it's going to look different depending on the classroom and the needs of the students. And so being able to use that pre-assessment data that you would have to kind of identify what are the standards and the skills, right, specifically that students would need to do that unit or that lesson, and building it in right on time when they need it. So I think you're on the track, I would say, as well.
Looks like you have a hand raised. I think Tika has a question.
Thanks. I wasn't sure if you guys were finished your point yet. But if you are, I do have a question around the family engagement when it comes to summer learning. And so actually, I think it was today, I received an email that was a press release about summer programming opportunities and to click the link for families to learn about what to do. And so as a parent, I am figuring out my summer back in January and February and what we're going to do. And so for me personally, I know I had been waiting to hear about what was going to be offered because there was new or innovative opportunities. And I don't feel like that I heard anything about that along the way, which was kind of prompted me to ask some of the questions that I did. And so for me personally, I chose to retain my son to build those skills that he is not getting because we weren't able to find other opportunities to build upon that. And I know that all families would not choose that and would like other options. So with the press release that was sent today, I went to the website and tried to review it. And, you know, for the typical parent, it's a little hard to navigate, even to determine what tab to click on. It looks kind of like a tic-tac-toe board. And so first I started with summer learning opportunities. And as you scroll down and try and find a couple clicks, it clicked into something else. And there's several different places, and it just seems very embedded. So as a parent trying to find specific help, I found that very challenging. And even though I have experience in education from a career aspect and how to navigating it, I still found it challenging. So I'm sure that other families would find it challenging. So my question was more around the technical assistance that would be provided to families, because it's almost like you need to be in the know. And so I'm concerned about everyone's access to programming from an equity standpoint for these opportunities.
Yep, thanks, Tika. Good question. That did get launched today. So we're kind of jumping to one of the questions. So we're covering it now, and that is the department's approach, along with the districts that support this idea, is it's the summer of learning. It should always be the summer of learning, but I think we all know that some families, have historically had opportunities that others haven't, right? So we have, students whose, family might, the kids in age might spread across 15 years, and they always go to a particular camp. In some cases, they go away to camp, and it's not only all day, but it's like weeks of, opportunities for kids that covers the arts, athletics, some academics, some not. But we know that families with means have access to all kinds of opportunities. And we know that others don't, right? So the effort really going into this summer is, how do we engage as many of those students who haven't historically had that kind of access to quality programming and opportunities that are in their own schools or communities, community-based organizations, maybe even faith-based organizations. So what the department did was put out to all districts and CBOs sort of a survey asking for, what are you doing, so we could house it all in one location. I navigated the system today. I wouldn't say it's cumbersome, but I do agree with you in that it's not easy, partly because there are so many things listed. I think there are over 200 opportunities, programs, camps, etc., that are included. I don't know how many of our families will utilize that as much as they will likely utilize their local schools and districts, especially the kind of families that need the most support. I think that's where they're likely to get it. And I do know that districts have been doing their due diligence to communicate those kind of opportunities. We just want as many students around their peers and responsible, supportive adults, doing both academic things, but also activities that have a positive impact upon their social and emotional well-being. So, we are really pushing summer learning hard. We're going to do our best to measure growth over the summer, although that's a whole lot easier said than done also. I mean, heck, we have a hard time measuring growth in schools in this country during the school year in an accurate way. So doing it in the summer, where you have various programming happening, some half day, some full day, is really quite difficult. For me, I've made this clear. I've shared with my colleagues in the districts and charter schools. Most important to me is that students aren't sitting at home, that they are with one another, doing things that help them academically, but also help them with their wellness. And just, over the past 2 years, they haven't been around one another with these kind of experiences and opportunities to utilize our parks, travel a bit, field trips, be exposed to the arts, athletics, etc. So the perfect sort of opportunity or program in my mind is half-day academics, the other half-day opportunities beyond the classroom, meals and transportation provided, and many of our districts are doing just that or something very similar. The department doesn't offer programming, it supports programming. And this year, going into the summer, I think it's significantly more robust than it's ever been, but it's certainly not a perfect system. And I appreciate what you just shared, Tico. And thank you for posting the link in the chat.
Any
Thank
other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying thank you. And then the other little piece was just, I hope in the future that there's opportunities for families to get that information that you referred to back from the school district, because I didn't necessarily hear from mine, and I don't know that it's necessarily on one specific person's radar as to providing like the technical assistance and how to access that summer programming. So that would just be a suggestion of mine in the future, of actually having someone's specific role as like a liaison working with families just around this specific piece, because I think it's a big enough of a job to tackle alone, outside of just putting it on teachers' plates or even admin's plate or anyone else, and trying to just expecting the next person to do it. Because I honestly think that that's kind of how we got here, is everyone thought that somebody else was doing it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we have camps like, I'm thinking of where I grew up, even though my parents didn't have the means for me to attend this camp, but like in North Wilmington, the JCC camp is huge, right? And I think you got to commit to that camp by probably no later than like spring break time. But those aren't the kids that we're really talking about or that we're overly concerned about in regard to access and opportunities. It's kids that don't have access to camps like that we're talking about. And I think the challenge for many districts in terms of their commitment and getting things off the ground had a lot to do with the staffing challenges, and just figuring out how they were going to, actually run a camp. So I'll give you an example of something that we did. The governor has a fellows program that we literally just pulled together in the last 6 weeks, with high school students being identified. We're going to have high school students, sophomores moving up to juniors and seniors, who we started with those students that are in the educator prep pathway across the state. And we offered them an opportunity to get trained and actually support the kind of programs we're talking about, because what we were hearing from districts and providers was, we don't have enough staff to do what you're asking us to do. And so I guess I'm confirming your point, Tico, which is a lot was happening like in real time, just within the last even few weeks. So lesson learned there. And we will do our due diligence that when we're here next summer, we will be, or next spring, I should say, we'll be in a better place planning wise. I appreciate that feedback.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well.
Secretary Holliday, thank you very much for being with us and your colleagues. It really is, it's a huge benefit to us to be able to hear directly from the folks who are at the decision-making level. So we appreciate your engagement and your being so responsive to the questions that were put to you. So thank you.
Sure, Matt. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I will say there is one more slide with 3 more questions.
I
Oh,
think you can pull those up, Haley. I think we've covered a lot of this in this conversation already, but allowing the group to sort of look at the questions and maybe ask any further clarifying questions. And again, you know, some of these questions, it's as much the district and schools, charter schools included, of course, like in knowing exactly what's happening with evaluating post-COVID learning, recovering opportunities. That is really, really hard. I mentioned that earlier. We are looking to, we don't have the capacity at the department to do this well. We tried to do it last summer and it didn't go so well, is my understanding. So we're in conversation with some groups and organizations that might be able to help us, support us, because we do want to have a good sense of student learning growth over the summer and use that information to inform us, you know, moving into next year. And then the final piece, how can Reading support? You know, all of you are very much involved in schools and districts in our state, and many of you have a great deal of influence. So, you know, and you're just really well informed. I mean, you're already, by being involved in Reading, you know, you're already doing a ton in the system. So anything that you can do to support this summer learning effort would be greatly, you know, appreciated.
great. And I think Tika's questions really anticipated a lot of the points on this slide.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. And let's go on to our work groups. I think Noelle is with us, and if she could give us a brief update on the educator work group.
Sure. We don't have too much to report this time, except that things are progressing as planned. We did meet with the Department of Education. The budget was created. We're focusing first on the scholarship program for Grow Our Own, because we felt like that was what we could go forward with most quickly and easily, since it's really just providing the funding for already existing programs. We're working on outlining the criteria for who would receive those scholarships, and we're going to focus on the critical shortage areas we described in the recommendations. That's focused on Black and Brown male educators, and the whole school PD. We're going to reconvene after July 1st and put out that after the summer. We'll put it out in the fall so that schools could apply for that to do for summer learning in 2023. I'm trying to remember what year next year is. So really there's no real new developments, but everything is just proceeding according to that schedule. And, you know, if anybody's interested in meeting with us, when we say reconvening the work group, obviously it's been a long time since we first started. A lot of people have kind of moved on. Their situation has changed. New people have come on board. So if anyone is interested in joining the educator work group after July 1st to discuss the details of the whole school PD, and also help to kind of see how the scholarship funding is going for the Grow Our Own, just feel free to write to me or Haley or Kelly, and we can add you to the list when we meet again. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't think we have the chairs for our governance work group with us tonight. So let's jump down to the settlement work group, and I think Aaron and Chuck are both with us, and I'll turn it over to them.
Good evening. So we're excited about our settlement committee. We just wrapped up a wonderful year. As Matt Denard talked about, we saw in the proposed budget from the governor, $12.8 million from Reading Consortiums. We're following that. $7 million for the Wilmington Learning Collaborative, and glad to see progress on that, and with the members of DOE who are here in the different superintendents. $1 million for the Ombudsperson program, and we're happy to announce that one of our current members, Tika Hartsock, is now the head of the Ombudsperson program and doing some incredible work as she launches that initiative. There's $1 million for the independent funding assessment. The RFP closed on April 14th. The bidders were WestEd and AIR. Would love any updates since DOE is here of who received that award. $4 million for the teacher recruitment and retention is still in the budget for being proposed, which was in line with the settlement, and $38 million for the opportunity funding. So that's where we are. We are now closed for business, completing our FY22 year and looking forward to FY23 kicking off in September 2022. Before we move to Chuck, if anybody from DOE does want to share if there's any update on the independent funding assessment, I should have asked that question when you were already speaking though. Anybody?
Hey, Aaron, have you heard, you haven't heard yet from Kim Klein?
We've not heard from Kim Klein
Yeah.
about that one.
Okay, then I think it would be wise for Kim to be invited to perhaps your next meeting, and, you know, or with the smaller subcommittee to talk with you guys directly first.
Even better, we'll just email her. We just wanted to answer without a meeting. That's how we like to roll. Appreciate it. So next, Chuck.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, this is our patented chart that we have. Actually, it's not patented. It might be trademarked. I don't know. UD, you tell us. But we've charted out the settlement requirements. And so we have confirmed that the stuff for fiscal year 23 is in the governor's recommended budget and moving forward. We're hoping by the time June 30 hits, all the stuff is still in there. In a couple cases, they've even exceeded the where we should be as far as the settlement goes. Next year, we'll be looking for things for the fiscal year 24 column to go in there, which includes an increase in opportunity funding and other things, including, I think, some early childhood, additional early childhood and so forth. Next slide, please. You see, oh, yep. Next one. There we go. There's some more there. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is getting done already even ahead of time. This is for our DOE friends who are on here, and Dr. Holodick. I don't know if you've gotten to listen to some of our work group conversations, but we do have a philosophical discussion sometimes about the icing versus the cake. And the cake, we know that we spend as a state 1.6 billion, maybe a little bit more than that, on public education. And a lot of this stuff, the opportunity fund, some of the grants we're seeing, it might be $150 million. So it's nice to have that icing, but some of how we got to this equity discussion in the first place involves the cake. So that's one of the reasons we're really interested in that independent funding assessment, because are there some things we can do as a state to reshape how the cake is distributed, used, monitored, flexibility, so forth. There's some things we might be able to do with resources we have access to already to maybe mediate some of that system-wide fatigue we're talking about. So that's one of the reasons we're really interested in the funding assessment and some of the ideas that might come out of that, because we know that we're not just talking about this icing here, but the cake probably needs some work too. So thank you for being here and listening to that. And we'll definitely get in touch with Ms. Klein. And I think that's it for settlement at this point, right?
Yep, that's it. And already emailed Klein.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron and Chuck. I don't know if either of the chairs of the social determinants work group are with us.
I'm on, Matt.
Hey, Ray, did you want to?
Hi. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So the social determinants work group is continuing to work with Dr. Adrian Peoples, DOE representatives, the Data Service Center, and other school officials to shape this equity data dashboard. This is one of our primary recommendations from 2 years ago. So we have investments, growing investments. It's really incumbent upon us to take a look at how are these investments impacting student outcomes for the children in the city of Wilmington. And we know that there is information that's already collected by the entities that I've referenced. There is information that we want to collect that is not currently being collected. So we are defining and redefining our data points so that we are thinking of this in phases. We are now working with, well, actually DOE and the Data Service Center representatives are in conversation to shape a memorandum of understanding and a contract. So that's where that is. Any questions on the equity data dashboard? How are we measuring equity in tangible ways, both quantitatively and qualitatively? So student voice will be, and other qualitative data will be a part of this equity dashboard. I'll pause. Nope. Oh, nope. Am I here? I can't see hands. Am I moving on, Matt?
Yes.
Okay. So the legislative, we're going to be talking about pending legislation in different stages. Haley has been really great with keeping the social determinants work group abreast of legislation through the legislative tracker and conversations with sponsors of respective legislation. And we went through quite a bit of time, those pieces of legislation that we believe are most closely related to our subgroup. And tonight, I believe that, and as well as other pieces of legislation, will be presented for the full consortium for your review and to see if you're in support. And you can see our next meeting, and that's where we are.
Thanks, Ray. And
Welcome.
picking up on what Ray was just discussing is she led us right into the next item on the agenda. Everyone received a couple of things in advance of the meeting, one being a summary of the 9 bills, the 9 pending bills in the General Assembly, where there had been a request for support from the consortium, and then also links to the actual bills for people who wanted to read the text of the bills. And as Ray indicated, I think most, if not all, of these bills were discussed in more detail at the last social determinants work group meeting, with the goal of taking the necessary time to vet them there before they were presented to the full consortium. This is something that we did not do last year, but there were a number of requests from consortium members that we do that this year. So the process that we wanted to try to use for dealing with this, just because there are 9 separate bills, and it's 5:56. We wanted to put the 9 bills forward, and they're all, again, listed in your materials, listed on the slides, and were sent ahead of time. And I think the goal is to vote on them as a group, but before doing that, to allow for anyone who wanted to take one of them off the list, in order to discuss it in more detail before voting on it, to allow anyone to do that. So even if it's just one person, we wanted to make sure that we were respectful if someone had questions or concerns about one of them and wanted to discuss it in more detail before voting on it. So I guess first order of business would be, if there are any bills on this list of the 9 that anyone would like to separate out to discuss in more detail, if you could let us know that, and we can pull those off the list and then vote on what's remaining, and then circle back to the ones that folks feel need more discussion.
Can I just ask, hi, it's TK again, a clarifying question. Were we voting on the multiple bills that are on a slide? Now I can't tell, sorry, I'm on my phone. If there's multiple bills on a slide, are we voting on all of them at once? Or are we still voting on each individual one?
I think the goal was, again, in part because they had been discussed at the committee meeting, the goal was to vote on them as a package, except to the extent that someone wanted to pull one out and vote on it separately. I don't think, and Ray can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that for the ones that were discussed at the work group meeting that there was really any dissension about from the folks who were at that meeting. But again, not everyone who's here tonight was at that meeting. So the answer to your question is that, we wanted to pull them off to the extent that anyone wanted to pull any individual bill off, but otherwise to vote on them collectively.
Okay, there is one that I'm not in support of, so I will try and keep my eye out to see what slide it's on.
But which do you know which one that is?
It was the one with the science of reading. It was like a companion bill to a previous bill.
Is it, Haley, is that House Bill 304?
Was it 304, Tika, the reading competency?
I think so. And then it was like assessment 3 times a year. And it was like K through 3rd grade, I think it would be assessed. And it was,
I think it's HB 304.
yes, I think it's that one. Now that particular piece is not what I'm in disagreement with, but I think that is the bill.
Okay, well, let's take that one off the list. And is there, for the remaining 8, are there any others? And again, folks shouldn't be shy about saying so. It just means that you want to discuss it further. Are there any other ones that folks would like to pull off of this list? And if not, I'll entertain a motion from one of the members to have the consortium to vote to support the remaining bills on the list, and then we can come back and talk about House Bill 304. But is there a motion to support the others?
Yes, Chuck Longfellow in for Dan Shelton. I move that we vote in favor of supporting the 9 bills with the exception of HB 304, which we will vote for separately.
Is there a second?
I second it, Margie.
Any discussion on the motion? And if not, this one, Haley, we probably ought to, how do we do? I don't know if we should do a voice vote for this one. I think we probably should have the individual members vote.
Yeah, I think for this one, we should do the roll call.
Yep.
You want me to do that, Haley?
Sure. Thanks,
All right.
Tony.
All right, Aaron Bass.
Approved.
Whoops. Chuck Longfellow,
Yes.
Rachel McNeil. Okay. Darrell Green,
Yes.
Senator Lopez,
Yes.
Brian Erskine,
Yes.
Jennifer Tompkins,
Yes.
Joseph Jones,
Yes.
Margie Lopez Wade.
Hold on. I thought we were going to discuss 304. Are we voting on all 9?
No, we're not voting on 304. It's the list with the exception of 304.
Okay, I just want to be sure because that's what's on display. Okay. So yes, to
Sorry, I
the
wrote
8.
the motion before, so sorry if that's
Okay.
confusing.
That's all right. I just want to be sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie. Matthew Den,
Yes.
Noel Picara,
Yes.
Ray Jones Avery,
Dancing myself off. Yes.
Stephanie Ingram,
Yes.
Tika Hartsock,
Yes.
and then Xavier Mills. Oh, my eyes are on. Did I miss anybody? If not, we are approved.
Okay. Let's go back to House Bill 304. And I don't know if there are any consortium members who this bill is Representative Williams and Senator Sturgeon and McBride and Lockman's bill. They're the primary sponsors. I don't know if there are any consortium members who want to sort of, make a presentation about it. I'm not sure that I'm competent to do that. Is there someone who would like to speak to it?
I'm sorry, I was giving Tika an opportunity since she brought it up, but
Sure.
Tika,
Well,
did you
I
want to
think
speak first?
Tika had some concerns about it, so I just thought
I'll
procedurally.
yeah, I'll give my 2 cents as well, but Tika, I just wanted to give you the courtesy of speaking first.
Yeah, no worries. I didn't know if there was someone that actually was speaking in support of it, but I have not supported any of the science of reading bills or companion bills. And my concern comes more from a parent of a child with a disability that sometimes needs different curriculum or programming or different learning styles. And just the fact that the science of reading is also a prepackaged curriculum program from a for-profit company. My concern then comes with the implementation and from a staff's perspective, their understanding with being able to utilize it with students with varying disabilities and if they need other supplemental resources just on what I've experienced as a parent, as well as an educator, and just there being some confusion. So those are some of the reasons that I haven't supported any of the science of reading bills. But specifically, I've had conversations with some of the sponsors and shared some of my concerns as well.
I'll just add that, as an educator, as a school leader, we're definitely not opposed to reading competency. We all want our students to be reading at grade level or above by 3rd grade. I think my opposition to this bill is that it just adds more assessments to an already overburdened system. And I can't imagine any school that doesn't already know the reading levels of their students. So I just think it's an example of just legislation that's sort of overstepping.
Well, and then
Aaron,
one
I
final
agree.
thing, sorry, just was one final thing to that is just, I don't think that this bill is actually going to do what they intend for it to do. I think it's not, similar to what Margie just said, it's not the right path forward for that.
And this is just Aaron saying, I agree. I think that having a prescripted curriculum be legislated is questionable.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt, may I be recognized?
Yes.
We did discuss the broader implications of legislating, which should be operational decisions at the district and the charter school level. And Senator Sokola did speak to the thinking behind it. I just, it's this one, but it raises a broader set of questions and concerns that it just seems like we don't want that to continue to be the trend in terms of legislative action. So just so you'll know that we did have the discussion, it still received majority approval, but there were also concerns at the social determinants work group meeting.
Stephanie has her hand up.
Thank you. One of the things I wanted to just put in the room is that one of the questions our members had that we asked the makers of this bill is, will there be a prescriptive program that districts are mandated to use? And the answer was no. They said that they would not be pulling in. I know Tika, one of the things that she mentioned was the huge science of reading program, as it were, the curriculum, the scripts, the tests that go with it. And we were assured that that is not what this legislation is about. There would be no prescriptive programs being incentivized or being used. I'm not sure if we should reach out to find out if that has changed in any way. But I know that's one thing that we were sure that was not going to happen. Districts were going to be able to use tests that they already had and things like that to make sure that this was being accomplished.
Did we lose Matt?
I think we lost
Leon?
Matt. It is storming, so we may have gotten knocked off.
Kelly, you're in charge.
I should pass that to Haley then.
Well, the
Are-
silence.
Are we ready to call the question, or we want to have further discussion?
There's there more.
Unless somebody wants to discuss, I think this is the opportunity. If someone wants to make the motion to support, they could. Or if the motion doesn't come, or if it doesn't get a second, then it's kind of dead in the water. So I think that's where we are right now.
Yep. Or is there any motion to support, is it House Bill 304? All right. I guess seeing no motion, there's no vote. And if Matt gets back on, we can bring it back to him as well.
All right, for now. Well, Matt left at a,
Haley, this is Rick Geisenberger. If I can just make a comment.
yeah, sure. And it's Stephanie, I see
So-
your hand as well.
So obviously, you know, I'm a non-voting member of this group, but I did want to mention that while everyone was voting on these, I decided to add up the fiscal notes associated with this legislation, with all these bills. And it came to $30.6 million within the next couple of years annually. So I'm not sure which of these bills are part of the overall budget solution that was agreed to with the Joint Finance Committee. I imagine some of them are and some of them aren't, but just, you know, for the commission's sake, that's what all of these add up to, about $30.6 million. So at least based on the fiscal notes, some of them have no fiscal notes, some of them have very significant ones. So.
Matt has rejoined.
All right, Matt, can you hear us?
Oh,
No.
it looks like he's getting on.
Sounds like it's,
Matt,
He's
we
having
still can't hear you. Oh, looks like we lost him again.
so just to confirm, in the previous vote for the other 8 bills, that did pass, correct? Okay, just want to confirm that the other 8 bills were supported, but there was no vote on 304. Stephanie, did you put your hand down or did you still have a comment?
I did have a question. I just wanted to know if there was a way to have some of those concerns addressed and maybe have that information sent out via email to the group. I know we didn't vote on it, just to talk about some of the concerns around House Bill 304 to make sure that we all have the same information to answer those clarifying questions.
Can folks hear me?
He's back. Yes, we can now.
I'm sorry. I don't know how many of the other members are out in the Newark area, but we just had a thunderstorm roll through that cut off our power. So I apologize for disappearing on you. So did we decide to put a hold on voting on House Bill 304 for now?
Yes, there was no motion.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea until we can have someone who, so we can hear both sides. I wouldn't want folks to have to weigh in formally on it. So I think that's the right call. Because I still haven't been able to turn my computer back on. I don't have the I don't have the slides in front of me. So Haley, what do we have anything left on the agenda other than public comment?
Nope.
Okay.
The last slide is public comment.
Well, with apologies again for the technical difficulties, are there any members of the public who would like to comment? If not, Haley, had anyone indicated ahead of time that they wanted to? Okay.
Stephanie has her hand raised, though.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I wanted to, again, extend an invitation to anyone who was interested in DSCA's Vigil and Remembrance for school safety tonight. It starts at 7 o'clock, and I tried to drop the link to register in the chat. We're going to have legislators from the federal level to the state and local level speak to us about just what folks can do to think about school safety in their own communities and community safety as an overall whole. And I'll try to drop that link in the chat again if anyone's interested in joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I think you had emailed it around as well. So thank you for letting us know about that. I will echo what the slide says and encourage everyone to have a great summer, and also to thank everyone who over the last couple of months has jumped in and been very helpful to Senator Lockman in trying to put together the epilogue language for the two biggest of the money wise of the Reading proposals that are in the budget for the wraparound services and for the pre-K services. There were a number of people who provided a lot of very detailed help in getting that all together, and we're very grateful for it. So thank you to everyone, and we will see you at our next meeting. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Good night.
Have a good night.